I think she's on her way, but let's get started. So what is it? 11:02. Okay. So hi everybody. Thanks so much for joining us today. It goes without saying that we're living a very tumultuous time right now, and for those people joining us today from Victoria, our thoughts are with you given what's happening in your state. I don't think New South Wales is too far behind that. We have nearly 400 people registered for the webinar today, so the topic clearly resonates with everybody, as I thought it would. I'm so keen to hear from our amazing panellists on what they're doing to manage traffic in and out of their hospitals, and what some our medical device leaders are implementing to comply and add value to their customers in resetting the new normal. Also joining us today, if we get her on, is Margot Morton, who heads up the ANZ Healthcare Sales team for Civica, who are one of the world's largest software companies, and they have a specific healthcare division that is working to deliver great clinical outcomes in hospitals. We'll have 45 minutes for the webinar and then 15 minutes for questions. Please add your questions, guys, to the Q&A box at the bottom. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions, so we'll try and get to as many as we can. So let's get underway. Firstly, thank you so much, guys. With us today, we have Lynne Simpson, who many of you will know. Lynne is Group Procurement Manager for Australia for Ramsay Healthcare. We have Lloyd Adams, who many of you will also know. Lloyd is the CEO of Hurstville Private Hospital and also looks after a number of other health e-care hospitals in Sydney. We also have Jaylea Strauch, the President of Getinge for Australia, and Martin Baker, the Managing Director of Boston Scientific. And as mentioned, Margot, if we can find her. So if we can start with Lynne on the first big question. Given that it's a long one, so if you need me to repeat some of it, please do. I would need that. Given that most hospitals are aiming to minimise traffic going in and out, how should sales reps and medical device companies in general approach Ramsay hospitals in the new norm, and how best should they comply with your expectations? If we start with talking about people who call on ward staff, so nurses and nuns, etc., customers outside of the operating theatre, because I want to come back to that. And also, how, Lynne, do you see in-services working?
Yeah, I think for us, from Ramsay's perspective, we're trying to minimise as much traffic in our hospitals as possible. Especially with regards, there's always going to be a need for medical representation within our hospitals, whether that's from an in-service perspective, training, service maintenance. But I think the key for us will be, how do we decrease that? I think only vital contact should be made, only if it's required from, I think ward traffic, I probably don't see as important. And probably shouldn't be there. I think that should be done remotely by phones or webinars or Zoom meetings, as opposed to medical reps coming into the wards. At Ramsay, we're putting in, our IT department has mobilised really quickly. We've actually they've designed a QR scanner that as you come in, you can scan it on your phone. It'll give you about 5 questions that you need to answer. Once you answer that, you'll get given a colour on your screen. On your phone will come up. It'll be red, amber or green, and you'll need to show that to someone as you enter the hospital. So if it's green, you're good to go, but if it's amber or red, you're required to see someone, get a temperature check and explain some of the answers you've done to the questions. So we're putting a lot of screening in going in. I think no rep should come into the hospital without pre-booking an appointment with a NUM or someone around those things. I think if we can minimise traffic as much as possible at the moment, that would be great.
Great, Lynne, thank you. So as far as in-services go, would you see them certainly they'd be happening virtually in education in that way, yeah?
At the moment, yeah, I think so. I think given the social distancing laws and requirements, I think it's best to do it over some sort of digital medium.
Okay, great. Lloyd, what are your thoughts on that question when visiting Hurstville Private and your other hospitals in southern Sydney that you look after?
Look, I mean, we're very much the same as from what Lynne has said with Ramsay. I mean, we're currently going through and doing a bit of a revamp on how we're going to be scanning people in and out of our hospitals. And we already have an electronic system that takes pictures of reps when they turn up at most of our hospitals now. So, you know, at least we know who's coming in.
Okay.
I'd like to say that, you know, there's a lot of good reps out there, but there's a lot of people who just take advantage and think that they can walk around the facility. And, you know, I mean, at Hurstville, and in a few of other hospitals now, we've got these scrub vending machines and things like that. And I know that the reps hate them, but however, for us, it's more about segregating you from the rest of the hospital. And I think it's something that's becoming a bit someone walks through in a suit and you don't know who the hell they are, whether they're a doctor or not. And then I think that causes some of the issues for us. And so back to what Lynne said, yeah, reps out of the hospital, more than happy for off-site learning. I think that's something that a few of the orthopedic companies have done really well, where they're doing cadaver meetings and inviting, you know, scrub nurses off-site to do that, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
But I think gone are the days where reps are hanging around in coffee rooms, and if you are, I'm like, I mean, seriously, I think if anyone was to find you, we'll kick you out. So I think, yeah, no, definitely screening, abiding by what rules we have, and more visualization. I mean, I think that's probably the best thing to know, so we can at least segregate you out to go, okay, that is a rep. They're here for whatever purpose, whether it be to repair it in a little bit of scope, or whether it be to, you know, give it in service if it has to be face to face. I think for us, it's more about actually visualizing that they're separate from the rest of the people.
Fantastic. And have you found that reps have, between the technology that the medical device company has and the technology that the hospital has, does that always work together?
No, actually, I think it's funny. I had a call, and this isn't really a rep thing, but we had a call with HCF last week, and they were using Microsoft Teams, and I would say about 80% of the hospitals that were on it, and we had Ramsay hospitals, and we had, you know, a couple of other independents that were on it. None of us could get this Microsoft Teams working. We all dialed in late because you've got to register on a separate system and then get back in. So I think the rule of thumb is I'd be asking, you know, what is your main form of, you know, telecommunication now? And if it's Zoom, which I mean our company endorses, then please use Zoom, right? Because it just means you will get up and on, rather than, you know, picking around for 15 minutes trying to get on a bloody conference call.
100%. And Lynne, what is that the same for you guys?
Yeah, it is. And I think that as we move into this digitalised age of all of it, big concerns for us from our IT department is our cybersecurity, and how do we maintain patient privacy, and how do we maintain all our IP and all of that stuff. So that's a main focus for us. Is cybersecurity and maintaining patient, of course, privacies. But I think we will go there. I think that everyone has moved really, really quickly in regards to a digital platform with suppliers. I know I've done a lot of meetings with suppliers digitally. And I think more so, I'm probably more connected with my hospitals.
Right, okay.
In doing lots of Zoom meetings with people and you know, exactly finding out what they want, what they need, with regards to reps being there, reps not being there. There's always going to be, with some of the specific surgeries, the elective surgeries, especially the CAT ones, that support from a rep is really needed. But it's how do we do it, and how do we maintain safe social distancing practices, and also security. We've all got smartphones, we're all doing things, but how do we maintain the security, not just for us, but for the reps, the medical device reps as well?
Yeah, of course, and there's a duty of care all round and all of that. So from the device company, the hospital's perspective, I want to come to that elective surgery piece in a minute. So Jay, what's Getinge doing in relation to what Lynne and Lloyd have mentioned so far?
That's a good question for us. I guess we have quite a diverse, you know, portfolio of products, so we therefore have to be quite flexible. So from our, you know, service team, as Lynne said, you know, it's essential that our field service engineers are installing and repairing equipment. we obviously provide ventilators to the community and to the market, as well as infection control equipment, which is vital at the moment. So we've supplied our staff with PPE gear, and they certainly have been instructed on the importance of adhering to hospital guidelines as well when they are on site. For our sales team, you know, it's again interfacing, you know, via remotely, talking and emailing our customers and reaching them, but also working with them in terms of, you know, how do we provide that support if they're needed for a Cat 1 procedure, as Lynne mentioned, then, you know, we're certainly available and making them, you know, continue to be so. Our clinical team can support on an education, you know, using virtual means, you know, recorded videos and webinars, and we offer an educational app. We've moved pretty quickly to provide that for ventilators, given what's going on in the world. And that information is readily available through a COVID, you know, resource centre that we have on our website. And we've obviously, by virtue of our critical nature of equipment, we have a 24/7 you know, support phone line that we've had and remains part of our offering to the market and our customers.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jay. Marty, where does Boston sit with this, and have you implemented anything around this?
So, I mean, I guess the first thing that we've instructed all of our field teams to do is make sure that you follow hospital protocols to the letter. And also don't assume that just because you knew the protocols pre-COVID, that those are the protocols that are in place post-COVID. So even for those people that have worked in the same hospitals for years and years and years, don't allow that familiarity to lull you into a false sense of security. So that we've hammered our team around that piece. I guess the second piece too is encouraging people around the personal responsibility as well. So if you wake up in the morning and you're not feeling well, sore throat, runny nose, don't go anywhere near a hospital. As a matter of fact, don't go anywhere near an office either, just stay put. And so what we've done is anybody that's fallen ill with any kind of symptoms that would be remotely considered COVID-like, we get them sent off for testing. We don't allow them to kind of re-enter the any of the environment that they would normally enter until they've come back with a clear test. And so that applies whether they're working in an office or they're working in a clinical setting. So we've done that as well. We've encouraged people to do temperature checks before they leave the house in the morning as well. Don't rock up to a hospital and work out that you've got a 38 or a 39 temperature or something. Check it first. So that personal responsibility, I think, has been important for us. The other thing too that we've done, you know, we never really anticipated ever having to do this, but we've issued our field teams with their own personal protection equipment as well, because we know that early in the whole COVID response, relying or assuming that the hospital might be able to provide it for you, you just couldn't rely upon that anymore. And it wasn't the right thing to do either. You know, you've got hospital staff there that are, you know, trying to preserve PPE. The last thing they need is industry reps coming in and using up, you know, their face masks and the gloves and all of that stuff. So we've issued our staff with that. And I never thought it would be difficult to get hold of face masks, but it was, particularly any that offer any kind of reasonable protection. So those are, sounds pretty basic, but those are all the things that, you know, I guess you've got to kind of organise, execute on, that you just would never have anticipated in previous environment.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Marty. Thank you. That's very helpful. If we can revert back to Lynne on this one. Lynne, can you comment on your thoughts around the level of activity for elective surgery in and around the theatre environment and the differences between each state in relation to providing case support and education in theatre, taking into account social distancing, and how will surgeons want reps to work with them now?
Yeah, sure. So I think you're probably all aware that as of, I think, earlier this week, we've decreased the capacity for Victoria now. So we're down to 75% capacity that we can do. The rest of the states, we're back to full. We've got no restrictions on the amount of surgery we can do. what is causing us difficulty with that, and everyone keeps talking about waiting lists and you know, operating, and I don't know if Lloyd's seeing the same as well, but everyone keeps telling me how busy we're going to be on the back end of the year. But with social distancing requirements in the operating room, what we're seeing is a decreased amount of available operating minutes. From an anaesthetic bay, we need to social distance patients. From a recovery room, we need to social distance patients. The cleaning requirements interoperatively is all diminishing the amount of operating minutes that there are to do, as well as maintaining, you know, social distancing in tiny little tea rooms that we've all been and sat in the operating room. We may need to ensure that we maintain all of those restrictions. What we're seeing from our sister company in the UK is they've put in cleaning restrictions. So the operating room actually needs to sit after a patient has left for 30 minutes before anybody can go into that room and even start cleaning.
All right.
Those rules aren't out here in Australia at the moment, but we are seeing the traffic through of patient flow through the operating theatre decreased.
Yeah, right, okay.
And I think where I would, and I guess it's to the guys who are the medical, from the medical devices things, what they're doing in regards to, you know, virtual realities or digitalizing procedures, and how are they using technology, and how would they start to use technology within an operating theatre to provide assistance?
Yeah, that's great, Lynne, and we're going to hopefully talk about that. We're going to ask that question. I guess it has a financial impact too on surgeons and hospitals when you can't do as many surgeries, right?
Yeah, of course. You know, overnight, we lost, you know, 75% of our revenue overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Back in March. So it's building that back up, and with that revenue, and trying to provide as much support as we can for the surgeons as well, and give them as much availability as well. They lost their income too. But again, again, I go back to those days of, you know, anaesthetists having 3 or 4 patients banked up in a corridor. Those days are gone. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And obviously the days of reps hanging around the tea room perioperatively, that's not going to happen anymore.
No more.
Yeah.
And I know that, you know, a lot of medical companies used hospitals as their place of work, and did come in. And I think there's some reps have been in hospitals a long time that even the staff think that they're employees. I think those days are probably over as well. You know, I don't think a medical rep probably won't be allowed in a hospital unless they have a prior appointment for a specific time slot, and they're signed in, and then they're signed out after that.
Yeah, they can't just wander around. Yeah.
No.
And Lloyd, you mentioned that before. But Lloyd, you've actually worked in the medical device industry. What are your thoughts on sales reps going back into theatre, and what differences have you noticed since COVID, and what will this look like moving forward in your hospitals? Is it pretty similar to Ramsay?
Yeah, it is pretty similar, and I think that utilisation, it's a hard thing to do at the moment. I mean, we just opened up a brand new hospital down in Wollongong, and right in the middle of COVID, so we can only use 2 theatres out of, you know, the 2 additional brand new ones that we brought online. So,
right.
And what we've had to do now is you know, we are changing processes around admitting and transferring them to keep that, you know, social distancing, because, you know, we've all got waiting lists, and we're doing the public waiting list, and we're doing all these doctors' private lists as well. So I think that's where it's caused, there's definitely a bit of pain there. But in relation to what you're saying about the reps, I think it's been exciting because we've had quite a few cases recently, and I do commend some of the companies that jumped on it earlier, where they're using, you know, whether it be Zoom or something else to assist during some of the more complex cases. So we actually had an iPad set up in the corner with you know, the camera and the rep on it, you know, describing to a nurse on how to put together, you know, a surgical screwdriver. So for us, you know, I think that's where the reps coming to the table with doing more video, doing more, you know, interactive online learning, creating more educational avenues for our scrub nurses, because
Yeah.
really they're the only consistent people in that surgical environment, right?
Yeah.
Providing them with more education is where we're at, right? I mean, if we're, as we sort of move forward now, we would love to see almost similar to the American model, where you have these reps come in and they would do in-depth in-servicing with the nurses, so that we can have a bit more of a knowledge base not being held by the medical device companies, but more on the nurses. I think Martin could probably speak to that in terms of the cath lab teams across most hospitals are very versed in a lot of this, that and a lot of the medical.
Yeah.
You don't really have to have the rep there, right? It's complex that they're using or brand new, but the majority of the time the nurses there do get a lot more hands-on learning than I would say our orthopedic or our in theatre nurses. But yeah, that's sort of where we're moving, I think. Well, I'd like to see it move that way.
Yeah, okay. So some surgical salespeople that we've been talking to are saying that they've found it depends on their relationship with the surgeon. So if they've got a really well-established relationship, the surgeon certainly is requesting that they be in theatre with them. Do you think that will be driven by the surgeon if the surgeon wants them there, or will it really be driven by what the hospital wants? Lynne, what do you think?
Look, I think it'll be a collaboration of both.
Yeah.
There's no, you wouldn't want anyone going forward doing a procedure that they weren't comfortable with.
Right.
So I think it's, there's a lot of med device reps who do have good relationships with doctors. Hospitals have good relationships with doctors, and I think it will be about minimising foot traffic, only having people there who really need to be in that room, and then leaving leaving the premises straight after. So I think it'll be a collaboration between hospital reps and the surgeons. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Lynne. Margot, what can companies? Thank you for joining us. Sorry, we're getting on. What do you think companies like Civica can offer in terms of digital platforms to enhance, medical device companies' delivery to hospitals?
Yeah, and I have actually been listening as I've been trying to get on, so it's totally okay. But I will actually just touch on Lloyd's point of the reason why the delay. I was just on a call with New South Wales Health, the Ministry for Health, and for their platforms, their health guidelines for their platforms are Teams and Microsoft products, so Skype and Teams. And then to move to this one, to move to Zoom, I have to use my personal computer because Zoom is not an approved platform within Civica. So these are some of the challenges. So I was a perfect example today of what the challenges are and what we're going to find in dealing with our customers and what we need to adapt to. Yes, there are technology solutions, and I think one of the questions that just came up, about patient privacy and different platforms that we're using that we have to be really aware of. Currently, we have a little solution that we're working with med device companies on how to actually communicate with our clinicians and capture the information, but also have that privacy, because we do know that med device reps and pharma reps, we do use specific patients as examples to talk about and how that works. So you're quite right, there is a privacy issue there, so that we have to make sure that we're on the right platforms when we're discussing that, and that everything's in a secure environment. So there are the technologies available, and it's a matter of getting the information out there, I think.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Martin, has Boston had any challenges? Sorry. Around going back into the clinical setting, for example, cath labs? Excuse me.
The honest answer to that is yes, and it's actually not been so much in the hospital environment, to be honest. So when our teams enter the hospital environment, they understand what the protocols are. The hospitals themselves have really strong protocols in place, and we've basically said to the team, get in and do what you need to do, and then get out of there. So, to Lynne and Lloyd's point, we don't want people hanging about. And that is a little bit different to perhaps the way that some device reps used to operate, where you may go in for one procedure that you were absolutely required for, but then you tend to make a bit of a day of it. So that piece has absolutely changed, and it's a good thing. We've been just quietly saving a lot of money on coffee and donuts as well through that approach. So not all a problem. But where the problem has been is not so much with the hospitals. It's been a lot of our team are involved in device checks at clinics or in neuromodulation devices and programming at clinics. So they're in a clinical environment, but not a hospital environment. And the confidence that our teams have entering those environments where the protocols perhaps aren't quite as clear, certainly where the precautions are not in place, that has created a challenge for us. And so we've had to put our own protocols in place. If a site can't guarantee that they've followed good practices with social distancing, cleaning practices, that they're not being asked to wait in, effectively like a broom closet with 3 other people, then we ask them to, perhaps make some other arrangements there. So I think to answer your question, Elizabeth, the challenge hasn't been with hospitals. It's been with other parts of that clinical setting where our teams in certain parts of our business are required to go, where there hasn't been quite as sophisticated an approach to managing the environment. And that's what we've found, and that's probably been our biggest challenge with regards to access.
And so as you're saying, the solution has been that you guys are taking sort of into your own hands to make sure that you're safe, and then social distancing when you're going into the clinic from the, say, neurosurgeon, if it's neuromodulation. Is that sort of what's happening? Is there a solution there, do you think, or is it education, or?
Oh, look, part of it is just asking the right questions when you're required to go back in. So just empowering the team to say, look, do you have a process where I can meet with a patient and do a device check and still be able to maintain, say, social distance? Or are your patients being temperature checked when they go in? So just some protocols around those things. The other piece too is trying to encourage some of those clinics to allow us to do remote checks as well. The technology's there to do it. Right. And so this has been an opportunity to encourage some of those clinics to embrace that technology as well. So there's no perfect answer to it. And you can't minimise the risk to zero. That's impossible. But what you can do is try and manage the risk as best you can. And our first obligation is obviously to create a safe work environment for our teams. And that's something that we obviously don't compromise on where at all possible.
Yeah, of course, I understand. So going to you, Jay, on this one, is Getinge is obviously different to Boston in that you certainly have products that provide case support for in theatre. However, Getinge as a business has a high percentage of capital equipment that it manufactures and supplies. So how is that working for your salespeople? And you mentioned before your field service engineers, because obviously going into Lloyd or Lynne's hospitals, they've got to install, they've got to repair, they've got to service the equipment, which is incredibly important. It's got to keep it going. So how's that been working for you guys on that piece?
That's a great topic. We've formed a working party recently to sort of accelerate, how we can provide some smarter options for our sales and clinical teams, and obviously a lot of that is around the virtual space. We had an example recently in South Australia where we were unable to cross the border, so we had to set up the iPad, as Lloyd mentioned, and provide that support with the local representative, and we zoomed in our expert from Sydney. So, and that was great, the outcome for the patient, and the clinician was happy, and that's a really good outcome. So we've certainly been creative around that, and making sure we're still supporting on the clinical level and the sales side. For the service offering, we've done a lot in leading in pre-COVID actually, in terms of automating and digitizing our equipment, so that we have visibility into the equipment, so that we can notify the customer in advance and have that data available to us around the machine, and we can predict if it's going to fault and it's going to require servicing and repair. So I guess in terms of trying to be a bit coordinated with trying to have access to the sites now, is an important part of that, so that we're actually going in with a purpose, and that you're getting in there, doing your job, and then obviously you're as Martin said, the days of making, perhaps for a rep to have a day, near and close to a couple of sites are probably not going to happen going forward. So it's being creative and flexible around that too.
And planned and organised and okay. Lloyd, what do you think medtech and med device companies can be doing to provide the same level of service they were pre-COVID, now new norm? What will hospitals expect in relation to digital platforms? We may have covered a little bit of this already, but if you have any more comments on the expectation in relation to digital platforms?
Look, I think the thing that's come out, which I've loved the most, and I think this is to the more Getinge and some of the big capital companies, merit, is that they're now introducing a lot more digital tracking of servicing, right? So before, sort of was that general thing where a service rep would come in and look after all your scopes and then catch up with you and say, oh, I did this is what was done, there's an assessment, you get a report. But I think what's nice now is the companies are getting onto that. And for us, and I think once again, Lynne can probably speak to this, is that we are being inundated with a lot of work, and therefore we are being pushed to take our current capital equipment to the limit. And it means that we don't have time to really sit around and wait for a rep to turn up, right? What we want to have is more streamlined access to get servicing so that we can get things turned around and back and running. Because just today, I think, 3 of my hospitals are all doing urology lists. For some reason, we need to change our theatre schedules. But, I would say there's probably easily about 100 biopsies going on within the span of, the next 6 hours. And if one of our machines goes down, right, then all those patients are going to be cancelled because we are pushing every single thing that we have. So in that stage, then what I am liking is getting more information, more data out of what we're currently using, where we're up to around servicing. And I think, as we've spoken to before, if the reps can provide more of that in a digital format, then we can prepare ourselves for whatever's coming in the coming weeks.
Yeah, okay, great, thank you. And Lynne, what about for you? I know you and I have spoken briefly about this before, but what are your expectations around digital platforms, moving forward?
Yeah, look, I think there'll be some long-lasting effects coming out of COVID, and I think some of the effects will be permanent ones. I think that with suppliers actually training on-site biomeds so that they can remote log in and review work or get biomeds or techs on sites to do that work with the support of an online platform with it. I think we need to. I think it will be the way of the future. Will be that we will be logging on digitally and more so remotely. I think as Martin spoke to with remote checking of pacemakers and devices, I think that will transition through into medical equipment, in-service, operative support. I think the whole thing, I think that's the way we'll go. And I'm actually surprised at how quickly everyone has adapted to this online platform over the last 3 months. Yeah, there's been some issues and there's always technical ones, but for the most part it's worked really well. And I think that transition from Zoom meetings and webinars like this can transition into the hospital environment. For me, I think my biggest concerns is, as I mentioned before, cybersecurity and patient privacy. I think they're probably the 2 key things we need to get right before we do that. Yeah,
okay. Margot, do you have any thoughts on this and how Civica, might help, or is Civica doing anything around this sort of thing?
Yeah, well, like I mentioned before, but I think we've all we've all touched on this. I think there's a famous quote: "It's a brave man that would bet against human ingenuity." And I think in this COVID time, we've all demonstrated, like just Lynne just mentioned there, we've all demonstrated that we can do things differently. We can, and I don't know of a healthcare professional, whether you be on the dark side as a supplier or whether you be on the hospital side as a carer. I think all of us are in this industry because we wake up and we want to make sure that patients have better experience, right? We can't do what we do unless patients are at the end of what we design, whether it be a piece of software that has privacy for patient, whether it's software that can redact patient information after the hospital specialist has had a discussion with the clinician. All of those things, if we keep the patient at the centre of everything we do, whether it be with technology, how we go to a hospital, how we deliver that service, I think we'll all be exceptionally successful in moving forward, because this is the new norm. This is not just a stage, as Lynne said. You know, this is how we're going to go to business and do business now. And human ingenuity and technology is the stepping stone to make it successful for everybody.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. We've got a pre-said question from one of our webinar attendees who wants to know, when existing or startup companies have new technology to launch into the market and they are not a registered supplier or partner with a private healthcare group, what process should they follow to secure a meeting with the procurement team during and post-COVID? I'll go to Lynne on this one, given it's Lynne's baby.
Look, I think my team's always really open to new suppliers, new product. You know, I love it when I've got lots of opportunity in my supply chain. So we're always open to meeting new suppliers. And I think from my perspective as well, and over the COVID, over these last 3 months, is that Australian-made product, I think, is going to come out more and more, that there'll be more and more interest in Australian-made product across, I think, healthcare in general, given the PPE crisis we all saw with product all offshore. So I'm more than happy for anyone to email me or my team. And if they've got a product that we're looking for or that we're reviewing at that particular point in time, I'm more than happy to have a conversation.
Thanks, Lynne. Thanks. And Lloyd, I know that you've got a procurement person for Healthecare. Maybe some people like Lynne does, but what's your take on that? Like, how would they approach if they're not a preferred supplier? What is it, a registered supplier or partner? How would they approach Healthecare?
Look, I think you can go directly to the CEOs. I mean, for us, it's something that I think, especially ex-medical devices and then coming across to healthcare, I used to hate having to, line up and try and get 50 different meetings just to get through to someone who would actually say hello. And so,
you've been there.
Yeah. So for us, it's something that but I've been in Healthecare now about 8 years, and I mean, we've sort of over the years the culture has sort of changed slightly, where we are a lot more open to new providers and new reps and everything else. I think out of courtesy, I would whatever doctor you're talking to and they're in one of our hospitals and you want to get your products in, then I'd be just dropping my email, my EA or the EA of any hospital an email and saying, hey, I'd like to catch up with the CEO, talk about this product that we're talking about with this doctor. And I think generally that will get the response that you want. We do have product evaluation committees, but they are generally they're used for us as a bit of a compliance thing more than anything, to say that do we have a rebate or do we have an agreement with a certain supplier that's going to be voided if we suddenly move, right? I think that's really why we have that. But it is left down to the doctors and the staff, the nurses, right, to make decisions on product. So
yeah, okay, great. So we're at 11:41. So let's just wrap this up and then go to questions. So is there anything, Lynne and Lloyd, that you could say just overall in general, what do you want to see from med device companies to add as much value as possible to your hospitals? So Lynne, is there anything you've probably said it all already, but...
I think complying with requirements during this the COVID issue and post what that looks like on the way out. Look, I think the relationship in healthcare between hospital operators and med device companies and it is strong. It's going to stand that test of time. It's going to continue. I don't believe that either one can operate without the other. I think just as Martin said, being personally responsible, don't come into hospitals if you're not well, and just ring before you come.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Make an appointment, just don't turn up.
Make an appointment, just don't turn up. Okay, is the key. And Lloyd, you'd say the same thing, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I mean, the only spin that I've run it is, I think, what I've really enjoyed with this whole COVID situation now is the conversation around how can we still grow. And I think that's where some of the conversations that we're having with, like, you know, Medtronic and actually J&J, which is hilarious, is that they're taking on board more of that, you know, patient engagement, and how are we now going to be, you know, educating GPs through, you know, Zoom, and then how will the hospital and how will our doctors, you know, use those same platforms. And I think that's what's really exciting, because now it's gone from having to be, you know, a business development GP liaison at the hospital, you know, trying to drum up that work. I think this is that time now where we're starting to work a little bit closer with our companies who have those resources and have those abilities to actually run some really good educational meetings. And that's where I think J&J had one a couple of weeks ago, which was all about weight loss. And they had probably about 6 or 7 bariatric surgeons on the call. And what was really great was they recorded it, and only a few, I think the feedback that went out to the community around, you know, the surgery and access and everything else, it then started to drip feed to a few GPs, and even myself, when chatting to a few GPs in the area, they said, "Oh, did you see their J&J talk?" And I think that's exciting, because from our side, it's always been a hospital-led thing, you know, to try and drive these educational meetings for GPs and for the greater good. But I think it's great now that the companies, instead of thinking about, you know, the education of just the surgeons, but to try and run more of those panel things around certain mediums. I think that's where I'm excited to see more of that, I think, because that helps us, helps the patient, helps the doctor, and then continues with that flow of referrals back through. So. Yeah,
okay, great. Okay. Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, everybody. Fantastic information. Let's go to some questions now, because it's 11:45. Okay, so the first one, do you expect hospitals to invest in more IT equipment, for example, cameras, to improve the ability to interact virtually in theatre? Lloyd, can you go down to that one for me?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're doing that now. We've actually got a small working group in the company working on a few things, and that's one of them, is to how are we going to have these cameras built into some of our more older theatres, and then as we build new theatres, we have that. And then the next step from there is obviously our quality and risk teams as well, working on patient consent and waivers, because we used to just have standard waivers when we do, you know, a photo shoot or film, but now with streaming, obviously, you know, it is a little bit more there. And so that's where we're potentially looking at our patient consent, where there will be that box that the doctor will go through with the patient to inform them that there may be a video conference going on, but that would be for their delivery of care. So that's the steps that we're taking from a risk point of view, because they need to be made aware of it, and then obviously videos are not going to be kept of it, and if they want it back, then it can be removed. So there's all those steps that we're going through now. So watch the space.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's going to evolve and change, I'm sure, like every day, every week, as the life that we're living in does. Lynne, Ramsay making some investment in their IT systems?
Yeah, definitely. We've beefed up. I've been with Ramsay now 5 years, and over those 5 years, I've seen our IT department grow exponentially. We're making lots of different investments in IT across the group. From newspapers, we've gone digital with newspapers now, so that you're not handing out newspapers, and, you know, one newspaper isn't going through 3 or 4 different patients. We've gone to digital platform for newspapers, for doctors, patients, staff, anyone. There's a log on, they can do that. So significant amount of financial investment into our IT infrastructure over the past 2 years, and like I said, they've really ramped it up over COVID. We've now going to have QR codes on the floor, on different places in the hospitals. Visitors, reps, anybody entering a hospital will be scanning that. So yeah, there's a ton of investment going into IT for us.
Yeah, okay, thank you. This is a question for Martin. With more interactions moving to digital platforms, what is the value of sales reps at current levels, and do you see job losses and consolidation? That's a big one.
Wow, it's a tough question. So the short answer is no. I don't see like reduction in our footprint in the field. I think they'll possibly be changing the way they work a little bit, but the reality is that a lot of our procedures, or the procedures that we support, do still require that very heavy level of expertise and that close association with the clinician. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon. What I do think, and you know, it's been discussed on this forum, that the days of them just hanging about a hospital to interact with a clinician, not necessarily related to a particular clinical outcome for a patient, for a procedure, I think that changes. Clearly the skill set of our field people is going to be a little different as well. They're going to have to be more comfortable coaching clinicians and hospital staff, cath lab staff, theatre staff through a procedure, you know, potentially from a different location. So I think the skill set will be a little different, but I don't necessarily see that you will have like a reduction in your overall technical capability, clinical technical capability. The other piece too is, you know, that these procedures and some of these technology areas are expanding at such a rapid rate that, you know, over time you end up probably just redeploying some of your clinical expertise into other parts of your business as that expands as well. So that is, look, that's my assumption at this point. I'm you know, that's my view on it.
Yeah, okay. I've got a question. Thank you, Marty. I've got a question for Lynne and Lloyd. Given the importance of medical device professionals to support cases and provide expertise, are the hospitals looking to invest more in the IT facilities to live stream into cases and provide support? We may have covered this a little bit already. We support this person saying that they supported a live case at a WA hospital yesterday, and that was live streamed using the hospital IT conferencing facilities into the theatre to talk live to the surgeon and see the fluoro images to ensure best patient outcome. Historically, this has been reserved for conferences, etc., for live streaming cases. So do you have any comments on that, Lynne?
Yeah, I think from my perspective, I'll go back to, I think that's something we need to cover off the first steps before we move into the operating theatre, is we need to ensure patient privacy, cyber security, and that we do get informed financial consent from the patient. We are doing digital conferencing. Our surgeons are talking to other surgeons in our region, in our hospital network group now. So, you know, where we've got a site in Dubbo or in a remote location, some of the doctors from the, you know, North Shores, the privates over here, North Shore privates are talking, and now they're collaborating and reviewing patient data and cases. So I think it'll come.
Yeah, okay.
I just think we need to get the privacy, the security, and the
security, yeah.
And they're key.
Yeah, the cyber security piece is going to be a challenge.
Yeah.
Lloyd, do you want me to read that again, or did you get that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Lynne. I think we've sort of cashed over it a few times.
Yeah. Okay. I can see that you guys are answering some of the questions here too. Sorry, I didn't realise that. So I've got one here. I don't know that this has been answered. So what is being done from a group management setting to ensure staff are compliant to group direction with COVID restrictions and communication methods? We are very eager to comply with the medium set by Ramsay IT, for example, but do have difficulties sometimes with NUMs, possibly reluctant to utilise the new medium or methods of communication, opting possibly for personnel not complying to the letter because it is easier to have hand something over to a rep. I think it must mean hand something over to a rep. Lloyd, maybe we can start with you on this one. You and I spoke yesterday, and you were telling me, you know, nurses have got to just quickly adapt to this thing, and if they're not used to using technology, and yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do is eliminate the amount of noise, because I think during this time, you know, they're getting everything from whether it be an anaesthetist that walks in and says, this is a new way we've got to use masks, to, you know, New South Wales Health publishing something. And I mean, I just got a text then that all restaurants in New South Wales are going down to 10 people, I think, as of the 24th, from a couple of so people are obviously... that kind of noise, I think, is the biggest problem. I mean, what we're trying to do is at every single bed meeting, every single, you know, clinical huddle, to sort of set that standard. But I think in terms of the medium for what you know, the reps are using, I think it really, at the moment, we do have a preference in terms of Healthecare, in terms of using Zoom, and, you know, our team over it, they feel comfortable with that, and I think that's something that we are now starting to put more in place across all our sites and across our regional hospitals. So
can
I
I,
think,
sorry, can I just ask, are your nuns and on that, are your nuns and nurses being trained in, if they don't know that technology, being trained? I know it's easy, but being trained in how to use Zoom?
Yes, yeah. So what we do now is we have a person at each site that now is sort of a Zoom leader, effectively, and then they're going through and making sure that everyone else is compliant. So if a nun says, "Oh, I've got this meeting and I've got to organise it and I don't know how to use it," there's a one person go to who's then helping set that up, right? And then they get educated and go from there. So I give it a little bit more, but I think everyone's sort of getting there. Most of my nuns here now have Zoom on their phone, so at least that helps as well. And I think, but that is our preference as a company. And once again, you know, I think that's. Yeah.
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, I think this person's saying that, you know, when they're trying to be compliant, but the NUM is reluctant to utilise a new medium like Zoom because it's not anything they've ever done before, and they'd rather hand something to the rep or vice versa. That's the challenge. But if they're being trained and educated, Lynne, is that the same in your hospitals? The NUMs and nurses sort of being educated on how to use these technologies?
Yeah, look, certain people are being trained. I guess from my perspective and from a Ramsay perspective, we want our nurses to do what we employ them to do, which is care for people, and probably not sit and do as many Zoom meetings. But we are definitely doing Zoom meetings with you know, our hospital our key executives within Ramsay. I think I'm zoomed out. You know, we do so many Zoom meetings. I think my diary is full of Zoom meetings, and I can't wait to go back to some face-to-face.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Like I said, I think from my perspective, I'm more connected with our internal stakeholders than I ever have been in 5 years. I think I've spoken to more of my CEOs face-to-face over these 3 months than I ever have before.
Yeah, it's sort of nice, right?
Yeah, it's great.
It's nice. It's good. It's good. But then I get the Zoom overload. I get that.
But from my perspective, it's harder for them to say no to me when they're looking at me.
It's right. Yeah, good one. I like that. Where over the phone, it's much easier.
Yeah, that's right. Or email, it's just no.
Yeah, no, email, of course. So this will probably be our sort of maybe second last to last question, but with the initial halt of elective surgeries, private health funds took a significant decrease in policies. Although elective surgical capacity is up and running to full capacity in most states and hopeful to continue, what do you see for short-term, long-term effects of health fund policy limitations? Who can speak to that one?
I'd like to say that I think I know medical reps and med device companies took a hit as well. When we stopped elective surgery, we took a hit. I don't remember any health fund or my private health fund giving me a decrease on my premium when I couldn't use it.
Me too.
Yeah. I wasn't able to use it for a good few weeks. So yeah, I think health funds and the amount of people and patients in health funds is quite fluid and mobile all the time. It goes up and down all the time. I'm not aware of any restrictions that have been placed on any health funds.
Okay, and Lloyd?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we're in a process where we're signing all our agreements again, mid-year now with all of the health funds, and I think the thing that's very consistent is there's definitely a shake-up, and I think the health funds are taking a bit more of an aggressive stance on a few things now coming into the next financial year, and I think things like rehab, things like short stay, things like what are you doing in the home, and that they all suddenly are becoming front of mind, because obviously the COVID's going to go on for a long time, and how are the health funds going to deliver services, and how they're using us to deliver that. So that's something that we're seeing, and we are having a lot more conversations now with our medical device partners on how can we get there, because I think Medibank and Bupa have come out pretty aggressive on their stance in rehab, and in terms of eliminating hip and knee rehab in the next 6 months. So it's a bit scary, right? Because for us, we're now having to react, and this is all just, once again, it is very much a COVID-19 driven, response. So yeah.
Okay. Just quickly, one last one, because we're nearly out of time. But I've got one here from a rep who says, as sales reps, we need to develop leads. How would you prefer us to approach leads within the hospital while not being a burden to the health system? Lynne, what do you think?
Following up a lead on
Yeah, so I guess this is around probably
technology one.
New customers. So you've got a lead for a potential customer. Would it be, I would imagine, the same thing as approaching an existing customer? You would try and get an appointment with that person. Is that the best idea?
Yeah, I would say from a Ramsay perspective, I don't like any new products entered into our group unless I'm aware of them. So I would say in the first instance, it was probably a call to a group procurement, and then we can follow that up internally.
Yeah, great. Okay, thank you. And Lloyd?
Yeah, I mean, very similar. I mean, but once again, I think a lot of our CEOs now are becoming a little bit more adept with using LinkedIn and things like that. And I think that's where I've always sort of shied away from that medium, but I think now we have to, because there really, for a lot of people, there's no way you can find out certain things and get access to stuff, and I think that's where LinkedIn actually is now showing to be a pretty good medium. So apart from that, as I said before, the CEOs are more than happy to have a chat, and I think if they're interested, they'll get back to you. If they're not, then that's another story.
Yeah, and you got to keep going. Okay.
I guess I can also add to that a question for a sales rep finding a lead, right? And it also goes back to Martin's point about repurposing. We are in a whole new environment. So those that will do well are the ones that use the data and use technology. So when we're not going to bounce into hospitals. That hasn't been allowed for a very long time, and those who do don't survive, right? So if you use the technology, if you use your MIMS data, if you use software systems where you can actually target the clinicians, target where you need to look, target where the procedures are, that technology is actually there that can triangulate your data with your MIMS information, with where your device sales are going, and then you can actually be more specialists rather than looking for leads and hoping. Because the other thing from a medical device perspective in the healthcare industry, we've just really lost 6 months of conferences. This is where we used to get our leads from, right? In that neutral environment. And we're not going to be spending money on plywood and signs and posters anymore. We are going to have to invest in technology. LinkedIn, as Lloyd said, is one platform, but there are many other ways where we can use software and technology to contact our customers to really target in, so you become more effective medical device salespeople and more effective in actually providing the best outcomes for patients.
Great. Thank you, Margot. Great points. Thank you very much. So we're now at 60 minutes, so we'll need to wrap up. But thank you to Lynne, Lloyd, Martin, Jay and Margot. I'm very grateful that you gave up your time to share your insights, and thank you for all of you who joined us today. I will send out a recording of this webinar and a 60-second survey to complete. If you could take 1 minute to do it, I'd be most grateful. It does help us to understand what everyone wants to see on future webinars, and it's how we came to host this one. There was a real appetite to hear from people like Lynne and Lloyd and our leaders in the med device space. and digital from someone from a digital healthcare platform, hence Margot. So please, it's 1 minute, please. I know it's, you know, I say people go, oh, delete. But if you could fill it in, that'd be great. Look, thanks again, everybody. Our panelists, fantastic. Thank you, and thanks to all the attendees. Stay safe and well, and look out for our next webinar, which will be on the 25th of August. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you
Thanks,
too.
Elizabeth.
Bye.
You've achieved something that 355 people haven't. You got an appointment with Lloyd and Lynne.
Thank you, Margot. And don't forget about PPD Search if you need any talent for your teams.
Lovely.